Hey guys, I see that there's already 3 people here. I didn't figure we'd have people here because, well, I haven't done a live feed in a while, and I didn't announce it real well. And there's a lot of other people doing live feeds. So just a reminder, if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, this is a video podcast. There are things you're going to miss. I'm sure Eric's going to show some of his prototypes, some of the knives he's made, things like that. I'm going to show his website. So if you want to see the full video version, there is a link to this in the description of the podcast. So my guest tonight is Eric Ochs. I've been saying it wrong for years. I kept calling it Eric Ochs. Ochs works. And there was a lot of people that corrected me when they saw me. And then Eric obviously told me what his name was when I talked to him at Blade Show West. So let's go ahead and bring in Eric. Hey, Eric. Welcome to the podcast.
All right. Thanks, man.
So I've already got a couple. Do I smell beer? No, you don't, because as you guys know, I've said it before. I quit drinking when my wife leaves because, well, she doesn't drink. That way I have a ready driver. And so
I might have one.
Yeah, I just, in case there's something that happens, I don't want to be stuck without being able to drive.
Yeah, true story.
Yeah. So I know that we have a limited time schedule, so I have some questions written up, and I thought we would just jump right into it. So I wanted you to, tell me about. I know you grew up in the Pacific Northwest, so kind of outdoor stuff, but kind of about yourself, how you got into knives, and how you got into making knives.
So let's see. First part, I think I got into knives because my dad gave me a knife for my 6th birthday. And shortly there, it was a little hunting knife. I should have it here on the table to show it, right? It was a little Western, you probably know,
Yep.
Small, skinny one. And then shortly thereafter, I think I got a Victorinox little Swiss Army knife.
That was the second knife my father ever gave me, was a Victorinox.
All through school, right?
Yeah.
I remember handing it to the teacher when, I was in like 4th grade or something, because it had a pair of scissors, and here, she needed a pair of scissors. Here's a pair of scissors. No problem. She used it to cut, handed it back to me, you probably shouldn't bring that out, she said later on during the day.
What? I kind of grew up the same thing in Ohio.
Kids have a lot of trouble with that these days.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was telling somebody, I remember everybody had gun racks in their cars and trucks growing up in high school. And it was because you were going hunting after school. You're going to squirrel hunting, deer hunting.
I remember guys had rifles on those gun racks in the parking lot.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Shotguns, rifles.
Right, yeah.
I carried a knife every day. It's never once thought of anything of it.
Right.
It's just completely different.
Yeah. But I never pulled it out at anybody, at school. I used it.
Yeah.
Even at school. But, it was a tool.
I sharpened a pencil in 3rd grade, 4th grade with a pocket knife. And a teacher didn't even blink twice. I was sitting I just sharpened a pencil in class.
Why would I get up and walk over there?
Shop class, wood carpenter's pencil, and shop class, sharpen a pencil with a knife and class. No one ever thought anything of it. It's just hilarious how
it's a different world.
The bad tilt that the world took.
I liked it better when it was, a little less concerned and everybody took things for real, I guess. But it is what it is.
So how did you get in? Now, I know how I got into making knives, because I couldn't find a knife that was what I wanted. And I was like, Elliot, show me how to use the stuff. I'm going to make a knife that I want.
Yeah. Well, in the Northwest, we're kind of spoiled around here, because we've got, Benchmade, Kershaw, CRKT. I mean, 2/3 of the industry is located in Portland or around it.
Yeah.
So, and when I started getting into custom knives, I was sort of following Bob Lum, and then he passed away. I had literally tried to call him a couple of times, and then I heard he passed away. So kind of a bummer there, but great knife maker. And certainly an inspiration to me, even though I never got to meet him. I spent some time, quite a bit of time actually, in Thad Buchanan's shop, who was Lum was a mentor to Thad, and so it was interesting, but mostly I think I got into it because I started messing around, like sharpening, big choppers and some of my, axes, because they had, chips and stuff. And then I started reshaping them, messing with other stuff.
Yeah.
And just, it just got incrementally more extreme. And then it's like, well, why don't I just try to make one of these? And, then I started ordering some of the pre-built things, and like, this isn't what I want. So really what I want to do is like design my own and use, S30V or whatever. That was the thing at the time that was the hot steel. So I just decided I'd do it, and it just kind of went from there.
Well, that kind of answers one of the questions I had later. I was going to ask if you had any, if you were self-taught or if you had a mentor or teacher. I was lucky enough that I had Elliot, and then now that Bob Truzola is here, Bob gives me all kinds of advice all the time. Bob's a great dude. I had him on.
Great dude. So
yeah, I had Bob on for the Knife Rates 24-hour telethon thing we did. And I kind of did it. I wanted to do it as a surprise. Everybody was like, holy crap, that's Bob Truzola. I was like, yeah, it's fun to get to know some of these guys and realize, like, even as the wealth of knowledge that they bring to the table and how famous they are in the knife community, that how just cool and easygoing and willing to teach you anything you want to know.
He's just a great down to earth guy, man.
Yeah.
Giving so much to the industry.
So,
and you must have had a good time in Elliot's shop. He's quite a character.
Always.
He's just
I was there,
man.
Before they moved out of their shop. I was pretty much there several days a week. Like, I would go in and I was doing anodizing, I was doing refinishing, I was doing some, not necessarily knife mods, but like add a sharpening choil or a finger choil, refinish a blade. John Grimsmo actually would send people my direction to re-anodize and sharpen knives. Now awesome. I don't have an anodizing setup anymore, but like John would tell people, like, all right, if you're in the United States, you want to get your knife re-anodized, this would be the guy that I trust to take your knife apart, straighten the lock bar, put it back, tighten the lock bar back down, like all that stuff. So it was that was pretty cool. So Aiden, cool. I do have a question here that Aiden asked. Are you making knives in MagnaCut?
I'm not. I honestly, I chased the knife steel thing for long enough that I kind of got to the point where it just kind of gets frustrating. You can do like 3V, or you can do, LMAX, and this is how you do it. And you're going to get a good result. And if you're constantly grabbing the next, new steel, it's not, it takes a while to get the, final result that you really want. You've like changed locations.
It was dark and it was causing all kinds of weird shadows, and I didn't want it to flicker. It was causing flickering. I don't know whether everybody else could see it, but I could definitely see it on my side that my screen was flickering. I know it's not. My first few knives that I made, well, pretty much all of my knives that I made were in 20 CV, and you get a feel for it. And then I've done knives in different steels, and then heat treat's different. Exactly. The way it grinds is different. The finish you can get is different. Inconsistencies, and it just like Bob Truzola is like, I like 154 CM. It's like, that's what I use it.
And it's like, a super solid steel. You can get a great heat treat on it. I mean, that's part of the thing. I think once you get comfortable with, one or two, I mean, I tend to use about 4 or 5 different steels with some regularity, 3V, LMAX. I like the CPM 154.
You like the CPM 154?
What's that?
the CPM 154, because as a guy that like my predominant thing is CrazySharp sharpening service, I don't like the edge that I get on CPM 154 as much as like 154 CM. That CPM, the power, there's something about it. It like the grain structure's so super fine that it's real easy to lose your tooth on the edge when you're sharpening.
Interesting. I don't know. Yeah, I don't have much trouble getting an edge with it, but I mean, it all depends a bit on like the process that you're used to as well. So it's it's.
Well, I use water stones and I do it all by hand, and I just find that at the
You have
grit
more
that I do
patience
others.
than me, then.
So what?
I said you have more patience than me.
I've got a guy that sent me. I have 3 Todd Fishers here at the house, and a Todd Begg that I've got to sharpen, and they're all insanely intricate, beautiful knives. And so, yeah, that that kind of patience, because like sometimes they're mere polished blades, sometimes, stuff like that. I've sharpened Rocksteads for people, so you know how like nerve-wracking that is. So,
and most I've got a setup that I use on my grinder, and that way, every pass is exactly the same. So you're not altering or changing your approach to the angle of the edge, and therefore you tend to get, that nice refinement that you're looking for.
Yeah. So Elliot taught me how to grind knives and do the edges freehand. And I tried to use a jig, and I honestly screw a knife up way worse if I do a jig. Same thing. Like I don't mark the center line. Like I don't mark if I mark the center line, without fail, I will screw that knife up every time. I'm just like, I just have to eyeball it. I have to freehand and eyeball it. Elliot's like, well, I mean, that's a good way to hone some skills. So I was going to ask you, have you ever made a knife in S125V?
No.
Don't do it.
No.
Don't do it. Last one I made came out at 67
I've done
Rockwell.
A couple in 60, which was like kind of old school stuff, but and it was super painful, and so
yeah,
it doesn't. For as difficult as the edges are to bring back, and they're never going to stay. I mean, it seems to me it's sort of almost a disservice to a lot of people, because you end up having to like help them get their edge back.
Yeah.
Because they're so hard to put an edge on.
That's why I love all these super steels, is because people buy these knives and then use them and they're like, I can't sharpen this. Right? I'm like, that's why I'm here. That's why I exist. I'm here for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've made a handful of knives in S125V, and I keep saying I won't ever do it again. But then my buddy will like, well, I've got this money, and same thing. Like his handles are always like the Thunderstorm Kevlar with the wires. It's a nightmare to work with. Steel's a nightmare. But the fact is, like, when you heat treat it, you get it to 67 Rockwell, and you can score the neck of a beer bottle, and then you grind it. I made this knife for him. This last one I made for him probably 6-8 months ago. And I put the initial edge on it, hand sharpened it. He uses it constantly, and like cutting down I have not yet had to sharpen it for him. He's like, no, it's still crazy.
It will
it's
hold
nuts.
The edge for a long time.
Forever.
Right. Yeah. No doubt about it.
So
I mean, that's great. My stuff has gotten like, so I tend to do a lot of like fancy pants stuff, and then more design work stuff.
Yeah.
And
which brings us to the next
knives,
thing.
It just doesn't seem to, make that. It's like, that's not the thing. It's probably more like Damascus or, something that is going to add to the aesthetic value of the knife. And that tends to be like more of the custom work that I do nowadays. So I think I've gotten away some from doing, as much of the EDC, which is why I've kind of like soireed into doing this EDX line so that I can, have some of that going on as well.
Well, and I wanted to talk about it because we talked about it at CCKS. You've got a production line that's coming out, and you've been doing them in batches. It's out. Yeah, I was gonna say it's like, but they were coming out in batches.
Right.
That's what I meant.
At that show, I was still waiting for them.
Yeah. So how are they going? I mean, is this going to be something that's going to be just constantly available now, or is this just going to be like
It's going to be in limited runs, and so what we have is about a third of we ordered 262. So it's a fairly small run, but in 3 different color pathways. And so I guess I've got those here, this is the carbon fiber one.
That's the one. I think that's the one I saw at the knife show that you had left on the table. That's the one you were.
Yeah. I'm trying to there. They have a option for a reversible clip. You can see right here, you can take the washer out and drop the clip in from the other side, switch the to a left side carry if you're a lefty. And then there's a blue G10 option. And then there's a green micarta. So that's the one I like the most. I'm a sucker for micarta. Right? Me too. That's the one I've been carrying. But so those have been going well, and we're, like I said, about 2/3 sold of those, which is great. And there's a few up on the website right now, and we'll put
that would be this website right here.
That would be the website.
That website right there.
All the tools here.
Yeah, I got prepared this time. I had enough time to prepare instead of like usually this is fly by night, but I haven't done a live feed or a podcast for almost 2 weeks because I've been like sick and busy. So okay, so Aiden says, Eric, what's your usual market for 3V choppers or more EDC stuff?
So mostly I'm selling stuff at shows right now. I'm not doing too many orders. Mostly the orders that I'm filling are from guys I've made stuff from in the past. Just because I've got enough people that I've worked with. And so, I mean, if you talk to me at the shows or bug me enough via email or DMs or whatever.
How I got the podcast. I just kept bugging him. I just kept sending and then calling him because he was silly enough to give me a business card with a phone number.
So I got a 3V chopper I made a few years ago here.
Good God.
Yeah. Hey, it's good for, making trails.
Yeah,
when you're elk hunting or whatever, or getting ready for elk hunting.
I always find it surprising. Career military. I spent my entire life in the military. I was deployed downrange and overseas. And the things that I have gravitated to now in my military retirement and not being like in the field and things like that are so much different than the big bulky thrashers I would have gravitated to when I was still in uniform. I carry like little gentleman's folders and stuff, and I get a kick out. I love them, and I'm so glad there's so many budget ones on the market now that are done really well.
Yeah.
Which was an intentional segue into the next question.
Oh.
So designers, I'm not going to say like who's your favorite designer because that always puts people like, oh, he likes this guy, it's his favorite. I'm not going to ask like a favorite designer, but designers and companies that you think are just really getting it right these days, because there's a big shift in the knife market with, and I don't mean just the Chinese knives that are coming out that are quality made, but there's a lot of other companies that are just kind of providing higher quality at a lower price these days. So designers and companies you think are kind of just really getting it right now?
I think there's quite an amazing array of stuff going on right now. It's pretty phenomenal. Really, it's kind of an exciting time to watch because there are so many designers coming and knife makers like Ray Laconico and a lot of the stuff that what do you have in your pocket?
I have my Ray Laconico Sirius.
Yeah. I mean, they're doing great work. I'm always impressed with them. Obviously, Riot is doing amazing stuff, and that's really cool. Those are sweet.
I love this thing.
We really didn't plan this, right?
No, we didn't. I just happened to have a Laconico artisan design, an artisan by Laconico, and my Riat.
No, I've just been, kind of amazed at the level of overall quality that's, coming from all over. I'm pretty excited about like a lot of the stuff that, that Borka has been doing with, help me out here. Microtech.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Bork. I talked with Sebastian. It's like 2 weeks ago about like every time we try to get something set up where I could get him on the podcast or something, it just doesn't work out. But yeah, some of the Borka stuff is great.
Yeah, really cool. And let's see here. There's just so much stuff out there going on. I mean, obviously I like CRKT because I do work for them. So I mean, it's hard not to.
I think the first knife I ever handled that was one of your designs and did not even realize it was that it's discontinued model now. It was a CRKT.
And like the terrestrial or something.
I think so. I just can't remember which one it was, but I had one that I borrowed from somebody for a couple weeks. I was like, that's a really nice knife. And then when I looked up some of your designs, I saw it on a CRKT. I was like, oh, I didn't even realize that was one of his designs. Yeah, it's exactly what it was. That's the exact same one. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this one's still in production. In production, but there's a couple that are out of production. This is the Avant Tac, which is it's a little bit bigger version of this one. If I can get them both on there.
Yeah. I know it's weird. It trips me out because
it goes backwards.
It's mirrored.
It's like the mirror effect. It's like, wait a minute.
It is, and it's disorienting at first. Like I've kind of gotten used to it because now I know that if I move my hand over here, I can point up in this corner. But like the first couple times I ever did it, I was like, why is this so fucking awkward?
Why am I having so much trouble with this?
Trying to show a knife, and you're like, which way does it go?
So this is one of the deadbolt ones with this is the lock right here. So
I remember seeing those
right there.
Yeah.
One of Flavio Icomo's designs. And they have a number of these that CRKT is doing, but it's kind of cool because of the lock. This is one of my designs, but anyway.
So that deadlock, I saw Nick Shabazz stop by Chris and Elliot's shop at Fair and Forge one time, and he had that massive.
Oh, that big one.
The great big one with the deadlock on it. And I was like, and everybody's like this, and that. And they were talking about, I was like, I don't know why, but I really like this way more than I should.
There's something about big knives, playing with big knives, just like, whoa, yeah.
Right? Guys like to put up the fixed blade Fridays. And I have several handmade Japanese swords from when I lived in Japan. I took martial arts. And so I have like three, well, no, I gave Elliot one of them. I have two handmade, and then I have one that's an actual old Japanese sword my father-in-law got me as a wedding gift. And so I was going to do a picture of me with a sword for Fixed Play Friday. And I was like, I don't know how, I don't know how Instagram's going to like that one.
Yeah. I have one out of a katana out of A2 that the local fella did here. And
yeah,
it's pretty sweet. I mean, it's kind of fun to, we used to make these little videos and, it's like a 3-inch tree or something, just chop it down in one shot.
I always like the videos of guys, you'd see them like testing swords and I'm like, that's not how you test. They're testing like pool noodles and water bottles. I was like, that's absolutely not how you test a sword. That's not it.
That's not really giving it the full test there.
Okay, I have a question because I remember that little flipper that you had at the show, and I didn't get to videotape it because it was so crowded the first day, and when I came back the second day, you'd already sold it.
Oh.
But that brings me to a question. What is your favorite knife you've ever made? Like every maker has one that they've made that just stands out in their head. Like, okay, that's probably the best knife I'll ever make.
I don't, that the knife that I had, it was a hideaway in Koa at that show. I don't know that it's the best knife that I've ever made, but it's certainly on the short list. And I love that grind, just the Loveless style grind.
Yeah.
I wish I had no. I was going to say there might be one on the website, but
nah, we could always put
it. Particular one is there.
We could probably look it up.
It's not later, very deep in my Instagram. I can say that.
So yeah, I saw that one because that you had like that was one of like 3 that were on the table when I came over and told you I was going to come back the next day, and then they were all gone. I know exactly which one you're talking about. They were all your knives were great, and then I got to see the production ones. So one of the things that I never thought I would like, and my buddy Tino bought a prototype, and then bought 2 more, the golfer knife.
Oh yeah.
I never thought. I was like, whatever. And he let me borrow it. And I was like, I'll do a video, whatever. And I got to looking at it and I was like,
yeah,
okay, so this is just a really good knife design with a little niche thing in the pivot where you've got a little, I was like, all right, that's actually,
and a divot tool and a marker that I don't have one sitting here to show, but it's kind of the effect of this, but like you can, just push on there and you have a divot or a marker that pops off, and that was actually a lot of fun designing.
I like the idea of like, because I don't need the divot tool, but the bottle opener, I drink beer.
Yeah,
bottle opener was cool, but I like the idea that you could get a personalized, almost like a challenge coin, and put like a challenge coin on your knife.
Yeah,
like if you were, it wouldn't have to have the divot tool, but if you're going to do something like that would appeal to military guys, unit specific challenge coins that you could, you buy the knife, and then every time you change units, you can put that on. And then when somebody's at the bar and like, where's your challenge coin? You just pull your knife out and put your coin on the bar. And that's the thing that popped into my head. And I was like, oh, that's actually pretty cool.
Some operations and, I mean, all kinds of stuff like that.
Just like a little miniature, like a little miniature challenge coin.
But, that's a good idea.
But I was like, that's pretty cool, because then it takes 2 hobbies. Like, I'm not a golfer. I think I've golfed one time. But I could see taking those 2 hobbies and combining it. And then that's something you're at the golf course and your buddies see it and they're like, what is that? You're like, oh, that's my golfer knife. And they're like, what, they make a knife for us? Yeah. I mean, it was,
we did that.
Yeah. I was kind of impressed with how much I liked it. And it is a really good knife. It just has like some niche elements to it.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun working on that, and figuring out the logistics on how all that stuff was going to work together and come into a compact unit and work. So
yeah, it was surprisingly, I thought it looked like it was going to be bulky and kind of awkward, and it really wasn't. I was kind of surprised at how comfortable it was. But like I've got big hands. I'm one of those guys that like there's things like that. I'm like, oh, that looks like it'd be uncomfortable. And I grab it. I'm like, oh no, that's perfect. So, what is your least favorite knife style?
Oh my, least favorite knife style. Oh, that's like some question that I would never expect.
That's why I like to do things like that.
Like, hit me out in left field here.
Oh yeah, there's a couple of them spattered around through here, just sprinkled in, just weird shit.
Huh. Gosh. I don't know. I just pretty much generally, like knives in most configurations. I suppose if I was going to pick something, is that like I tend to gravitate towards knives that functionally work well to do the job that they're designed to do, whether it's a kitchen knife or something like that. So I think the thing I would say would be, knives that don't function well. And that's sort of a cop out for your question. But
no, it's not. I mean, I grabbed a knife specifically because there's a couple types of knives that I'm not a fan of integrals. I think that they're just kind of silly and like it's kind of like showing off. And it's
kills me is like, people make choppers, but they have like a lot of really hot point handles, or the handles are too small.
Yep, and your hand slides up on it.
You got to get that, handle needs to fit your hand well and not have a bunch of hot spots. Handles are so important.
It's probably the most important thing. It's the first thing I look at. Like, I don't care. Like, the last thing I look at, everybody's like, oh, like, I don't look at the Rockwell. I don't look at the blade steel. I don't look at, how clean the action is or anything. First thing I look at is how does it feel in my hand, which is why, as much as I might not like integrals, I do like this. This is one of those ones I'm like, okay, integrals are heavy and they're awkward and they're more difficult to take apart and clean. And you're just adding more difficulty because you can't do the internal milling to clean it up real well. And so they're heavier and they're bulkier and stuff like that. But I do like this one because it is really comfortable. And that's when I started making knives, that's the first thing I would do is I would make a handle and then I would just come up with a blade that went with that handle. Like, oh, that feels good. Now let's figure out what the blade should look like. All right. I gotta make some noise. Mike loves M-Tex. Actually, I don't. It stays on the shelf here for two reasons. It sits in a box so it can't contaminate any of the good knives. And if I throw it away, there's a chance somebody might pick that up and have to carry it. Like somebody somewhere would be like, oh, look, a free knife. And then they'd carry it. And I would feel guilty about putting that out into nature. It's not good. It's toxic. What is this? The handle on the sea snake is the best, right, Mike? Actually, I think my stonefish design, my combat knife design, was the most comfortable handle of the like 3-4 knives. Well, actually, I can't say that because the dagger I designed has the exact same handle. It's just basically a dagger version of that combat knife. So there's your answer, Havoc. Don't expect to get any more attention.
You trash on your guests like that.
It's just not all of them, just a couple.
Just your favorite ones.
No, they're not. He'll hear you and then think I like him.
Okay.
Okay. So, what is the worst knife you've ever owned? Because all of us know, growing up, we bought knives and then.
Oh man. And I'm supposed to remember what it was called or something. I mean, it's probably
you don't have to be specific, but like it was probably a United Cutlery. That's usually where most of the people go. It was a Frost or a United, one of those two.
Or what comes to mind is some knife that I bought at a gas station because I was going fishing and had forgot a knife, and it was some cheesy, you know, Chinese thing that ended up like falling apart, you know, during the weekend.
Like you opened it and you're like, oh, that's
like, oh, what
that's
did I even buy
disappointing.
this for?
I think the worst knife, honestly, the worst knife I've ever had. I would like to say it's that ceramic Boker folder that I have, but it's not, because like that actually cuts really well. It doesn't have
They
problems.
do.
Yeah, it cuts great, but like after like 3 weeks, like the thumb stud is loose and rolling around, and you've got chips on the lock interface because it's got lock stick and it's just all screwed up. And eventually you're going to snap it open and the blade's just going to go flying. But it does cut really well. I had a little folding knife that one of my cousins or somebody gave me, and it was like it looked like a buck 110.
Yeah,
but it absolutely wasn't. And I was like, and now knowing about making knives and things like that, I was like, did they even heat treat this? Did they send this out with an annealed blade? Is this what this is?
I think that knife I was, just telling you about that I bought at the gas station. Yeah, I think that was kind of that same genre there. It was like made to look like some buck thing.
Yeah.
The scales fell off. The handle scales fell off.
I was going to say, like, he gave it to me. I think it was like a Christmas or a birthday present. I dropped it, and like the wood scale, like the wood thing that was on it, was just like so thin that it just like broke off from the pin. And I was like,
which is too bad, because the real thing is actually a pretty cool knife.
I love the buck 110. Yeah. I did a video about the old timer, the one that looks almost identical to it. For me, I find it's a little bit bigger and it's got a different angle to the way the handle is cut out. I think that actually, it's not better, but it's more comfortable for me. But it's definitely not better because it's a way shittier steel. Right. It's like, I think it's like 7 CR. But yeah, it was like we all grew up like in a time. I'm 47. I'm not sure how old you are, but we're close to the same age. Like we grew up in a time.
I got a few years on you, but not many.
I was to say, but like we grew up in a time where there were no good production knives, really. Like you had a couple. Like you had Buck, and you had Buck, and then you had maybe Gerber, and then Benchmade when they were Pacific Cutlery, and
right. And Western made some decent knives.
But they were a division of Schrade, weren't they?
I
think Schrade owned Western.
This was pre Schrade. They've been around for a long time, or they were around for a long time before they probably became part of Schrade. I think you're right. They may have become. I don't know.
I thought that Schrade bought them before Schrade got sold to China, before they basically sold the name to China. I thought that Western was part of that, like when they were still an American-made company. I mean, but I mean, then you have like Case.
Like that was like the first knife I ever owned, and I think at that time they were like still made in Portland or whatever, and and I think they owned themselves at that point, but that was back in the 60s. So
I just found, and I was talking about it in a video. I did a video here not long ago. Pete from Cedric and Ada started calling people out for 5 knives that make you smile. And I had a knife that immediately popped to mind, and we had just moved and I couldn't find it. And I was heartbroken. It was the first knife that my father ever gave me. And I've had it since I was like 6 years old. And it was a little Camelot silver sword. Well, when we moved, I have a knife case that's an insert from Nowpack that looks like an ammo can. And so when we moved, one of my friends mistook it for an actual ammo can, and put it in my pew safe. And I was standing in front of it, and I was getting something out because I had gotten a new laser sight, and I was going to mount it on one of my pews. And I looked down, and I was like, well, that's not. And I pulled it out, and there was a bunch of stuff that I hadn't been able to find. Yeah, that's where it was. So now it's on my workbench. And nice. I talk about it in the video that went up today. Like the logo that I use on knives is my initials that's on that knife. My father engraved my initials on that knife in his handwriting, and Elliot scanned it.
Vibratory tools.
Yeah, exactly. And Elliot took that and scanned it and turned it into my logo for the Emler designs.
That's cool. That's
So
really
yeah,
cool.
you were talking about your dad giving you a knife on your 6th birthday, and I was like, just a crappy little cheap folding knife. And I was like, yeah, mine's over here.
Yeah, but those are kind of important touchstones, you know.
Exactly. Like, I don't have any of the other knives that he gave me. Like the Swiss Army knife got lost somewhere. I had a Simmons that he had given me at one point that was a nice little Simmons outdoor plastic handle lockback, super sharp, and it got lost somewhere on a fishing trip. And when we got back to the truck, I was like, I can't find my knife. And we went back and looked for it, never found it. But that one, I carried that one to 16% of the countries in the world when I was in the military.
Right
It went to Europe, it went to the Middle East, it went to Japan, it went all over Asia with me when I was stationed in Japan. And it's just kind of cool. I was able to carry that with me for that many years. So,
absolutely.
now I have to ask you, because I have only gotten to go to shows from Vegas to the West. What's your favorite show to go to? Like, of all the shows, what's your favorite?
Probably The Gathering.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Vegas. It's a fun place to go. There's a ton going on, but it's not really my scene.
Me either.
But that show is like the it's just like the Oasis or whatever. It's so chill.
It's like a family reunion.
It's just a great crowd.
It's way more laid back than any of the other shows. Everybody's got it's like the agenda is different. Like, everybody's just going around talking to each other. I don't give a shit if I sell anything. I mean, everybody does, but you know, it's not as big a push. And then, like, everybody hangs out. It's not like some of the other shows where, like, end of the show, you just don't see anybody. End of the show in Vegas at USN, everybody's in the Cove. Like, everyone. Like, it's like everybody just like, let's just move upstairs. Yeah. And it was awesome. I had a blast at USN.
Yeah. With Sacco taking over the California custom shows and doing that, I'm curious to see how that's all going to work out. I liked that show that we just went to.
CCKS was fun.
Yeah. I mean, and now there's fall and a spring.
Yeah, they're gonna
show. So
that makes me happy, because I don't get to go to shows very often because there's not many out here in California, and
you're gonna have to.
Well, the whole thing was, now that Blade Show West
now, because Blade West
is out here. California Custom Show fall and spring.
Yeah,
and now they're doing Blade in Texas, and I'm friends with Jim Skelton, and I'm definitely going to see if I can crash on his couch.
There you go.
For the Texas show. I don't know if I'm going to go this year. You know, this is the only income I make right now with the COOF pandemic putting me out of work. So
yeah,
it's not great. It's better than nothing, and I'm working on other stuff for it. But yeah, it's definitely, it's hard to go to shows because it costs. Like, people don't realize.
Yeah, I mean, as a knife maker, obviously I have a vested interest in it, and I pay for it. But going to Blade Show is way more expensive than doing like some of the West Coast shows. It cost me a lot less to travel to. It's cheaper to stay, and everything. So you definitely have to kind of figure out what works the best. But there is so much fun to be had at the shows, just meeting people and checking all the different knives and materials. I always have a great time checking out materials and stuff like that. So
hang on just a second. Metal Man Sean, I don't know if you saw, but I messaged you, and I haven't checked anything to see if you sent me anything, but you won November's giveaway for the members, for the paying members. So if you haven't already sent me your address, I would appreciate it so I can get that out. And as far as Cheers. What are you guys drinking tonight? He's drinking beer. I'm getting over the flu. 2, if something happens and I sharpen knives and I work on knives, I don't think it's a real good idea for me to be intoxicated and not be able to make it to the emergency room. You know what I'm saying? I'm a responsible adult. I can not drink while my wife's gone. So,
my wife's here, so I guess I'll drink.
My wife's in Japan until the end of January.
I know, you were telling me. That's awesome.
Yeah, she's visiting family. She hasn't got to see her mother, and her mother had COVID, and her sister had cancer surgery about a year and a half ago, and is just getting over the whole chemo thing now. And so I wanted her to get to go, and because we sold the house and stuff like that, we had the money, so she could go. Next year, I don't know. You know what I mean? That big chunk of money I got looked great, but the government hasn't taken their bite of it yet. So we've been really frugal. What is your favorite handle material? I think we already touched on it. I thought you said it was micarta, right?
Oh, well, on a personal level, yeah, probably. So, although I do like as far as finishing knives, I'm always excited to see how like Damascus or wood finishes out. That Koa one that I did at that California custom show came out so great.
It was beautiful.
Yeah.
I did one in what was it? Redwood heart or redwood burl, burl,
like a redwood burl.
Yeah, I did one in that, and it came out, and it looked like a composite. It looked like it was made out of stone. You know how when they polish like a cat's eye stone, it had all those little spots, and I was taking it up.
It almost looks like you get like a cross section of the brain or something like that.
Yeah,
it's just so incredibly intricate.
I used micro mesh, the stuff that you use for finishing and detail, like scratch when you're painting. And I hand sanded those scales to 10,000 grit with micro mesh.
Nice.
And they were mirrored polished. And when you would get those, you could see all the little, because it was stabilized. So it looked like it was plastic. And I had taken some pictures of it. No one had bid on it and even said they wanted it. I had two of them. One was, there was two different kinds of metal. One was like a tiger stripe, and one was that redwood redwood burl. Yeah. And I was on my way to take him up to Quinn Knives to put him up there on consignment because he had a spot on a shelf with my name on it and everything. And I'm taking these knives up, and I got a call from a guy. I was almost it's like 45 miles up there. And this guy calls me. Is like, I will give you $900 for that knife right now. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm only selling one because that's more than I'm going to get on consignment. Woohoo! Sold. I hate working with wood. It's just like you can get away with so many things with other materials that you can't get away with wood.
Yeah. And honestly, Damascus can be a bit the same way. It's just like, any little scratch or blemish or whatever, it shows so much, and you're just like,
I made
wrong.
Elliot had a bunch of little pieces of Damascus, just cut off pieces. He's like, dude, if you want them, if you want to take the time to clean them up and do that and drill holes in them and make them independents, he's like, if you could sell them. And you're right. Like it will look perfectly polished until you put a torch on it. You're like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah, right.
What happened? How come this looked so mirror polished when I had it over here, but now I can see every scratch that's on it?
Yeah. I get down there with the magnifying, one of those lighted magnifying glasses, and like, okay, are there any scratches?
Jeweler's loop and a flashlight.
Right? Like, because I don't want to have to go back and rework it. Plus, it gets, once you heat it, it actually gets a little harder and stuff, especially if it's black Damascus. It really changes the feel of the metals. So
I noticed that because after I torched it, and then I was like, oh, I got to go back and clean that up and then repolish it. And I had to get the little fixture thing that I was using that I had made so I could get it on a buffing wheel, because like these were tiny little like pendant, like charm bracelet things. And when buffing wheel catches it, it shoots out and bounces off the wall.
And it's so much fun to hold on to something this size.
You're like, Well, I guess I'm not selling that one because it just flew past
Which
my
wall
head at
did
the
that
speed
stick
of
in?
sound. Huh? I mean, but your fingernails, like your thumb and fingernails look great. Like my wife was like, how did you get your
Afterwards.
thumb so shiny? And I was like, oh, I was making those little pendants. But so okay, here's another one of those weird off the wall questions. What's your dream knife build? Like if you were given free reign to do whatever you want, what would be your dream knife? You didn't have to sell it. You didn't have to worry about the price. You didn't have to worry about like how you were going to get the stuff or limited quantities. So that means like materials you can't get anymore, like carbo quartz and stuff like that.
I have a few chunks of that still around.
Stuff's gorgeous.
Yeah, it is. It is. But not very big. My dream build. So would this be for myself or
Yeah. This is like your personal.
For personal. I think I'd probably be looking for.
That's my buddy Polly. He's a weirdo. We're not gonna.
I think I'd probably be looking for a fixed blade. Actually, probably something in like a big bear with some sweet stag or something on it. Maybe mammoth.
Ooh, I had a Graham. I had a Graham fixed blade that came in. It was like the Graham Razel style, but it was like a fixed blade sheath, and it had the mammoth tooth. And I was like, oh god, it was beautiful.
Yeah, that tooth is pretty sweet. Yeah,
it has a weird pattern inside it too. When you look at it, it's almost like a
and it looks like it's totally like crystallized in part of it. It's pretty trippy. But I really like the mammoth ivory.
See, this is why we don't acknowledge. This is why we don't acknowledge my friend Polly. This is why these things. So if you guys are listening on a podcast, you're missing out because there's things that come in here. I'm not reading that. How do I? Where's it at? Yeah, I like when I think about what my dream knife would be. It's actually somebody already made it. I can go grab it. It's right here on my workbench.
I want to see it.
So I don't have to make it because Bark River Knives already made it.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
So like this is just about perfect. And then with that little, it's got the liners underneath.
Yeah.
So this was a gift from one of my YouTube subscribers. Just like, hey, I want to buy you something. I'm like, okay, don't go crazy. Like you can get me something. I'm not going to tell you not to because you're going to do it anyway.
This Randall's pretty sweet.
Oh, you've got a Randall.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Right?
That's nice. I like that.
Pretty classy. Super functional.
Yeah. I always wanted the...
this is the one you want to take into Starbucks for sure.
Yeah. Well, I don't think there's not here in San Diego. Well, San Diego actually is not too bad. I was talking with somebody talking about weird knife laws that now that we've got on a little sidetrack, talking about knife rates. I was talking with a customer and they were like, oh, you can't carry a fixed blade anywhere in LA. I was like, what? And they're like, oh yeah, it's like a felony. I'm like, in San Diego, literally an hour's drive south, as long as it's not concealed, as long as you can see the sheath, I can carry whatever I want. There's no size restriction. Now, I know the municipalities have their own rules. Like San Francisco, you can't carry a folding knife more than 3 inches. So it's just, I just find it silly. I was like, it's a tool. It's not a weapon. It's a tool.
Well, like I said, I grew up carrying one.
Yeah.
You know,
I grew up in a town of like less than 300 people in Southeast Ohio, foothills of the Allegheny Mountains. Everybody had a knife. You had to.
Right? I believe it.
You had to have a knife. Like we had at one point, I think the farm was, when I was a kid, the farm was like 480, 500 acres.
Right.
You got a cow that's caught up in something. You got to cut something, and you've got to have a knife. Just all there is to it. Polly's being an ass. Polly knows exactly where my wife is at. Okay. Knife trends that you like and knife trends that you hate.
Oh, let's see here. Knife trends that I like. Well, I do think there has been a ton of really quality stuff out there, which is kind of fun from a customer standpoint. I mean, just there's a massive amount of choices of cool stuff. I suppose too many choices is is sometimes bad too, but just kind of uh, leaves you with uncertainty as to what to buy. But I think it's pretty cool that there are really that many options that are really pretty good stuff. I mean, there's a lot of good things out there. I like to see, like with what I've started doing, and what Brian Nadeau has been doing, and Pena and stuff. Just like independent knife makers kind of getting their own brands out there as well. I think that's kind of a cool trend.
Yeah,
I think that's
I
kind of
was going to say,
exciting.
I have to agree with you. I love Brian's stuff, and I talked to Brian. I don't know why I haven't talked to Brian about coming on the podcast. I love Brian. I talk to him pretty regular, but his stuff is great. The complete over the top dagger that he makes, that arch nemesis dagger. You're like, it doesn't make any sense. But when you get one in hand, you're like, I don't care how little sense this makes. This is amazing. And I've gotten to handle a couple of them now. And I'm like, this is nuts.
Damn,
like this thing is
cool.
Amazing. It's incredible. It's like a lot of other stuff though, too. Like, it's like this. Like, this isn't a useful functional thing. It's just fun to play with. But
well,
I'm like,
it can be.
It actually
you can
cuts
still
really
carve
well.
your steak with that. I'm not going to hold you back.
But there's so much cool stuff going on in the knife community, and now it's so easy with open source like Fusion and CAD Cam and all this stuff. It's easy for guys to just sit down and throw a design together and say, hey, like, this is a knife I would want, and then take it to a maker, a company, and say, hey, are you guys interested in this? And sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. I mean, I've got a couple designs that no one wanted, and I'm like, I guess I'll fucking shit can those. No one wants to make that. So, it's just cool that now you're at a point where you can get something out onto the market where a few years ago you really couldn't. Like, you had to be known. You had to have been a custom maker for like a good period of time before anyone even wanted to touch one of your designs.
Right. Well, and I mean, there's been such a proliferation of like companies in China as well, getting into, or at least us being aware of them. Maybe they may have well been making knives and selling them in Southeast Asia. I don't know, but but there's certainly been, a proliferation of them, and a lot of them are doing pretty cool stuff. I mean, there's great things coming out of the American makers, but we've been doing it for a long time and sort of have a history, so we weren't seeing that stuff if it was out there.
I still think that there's a couple American makers that have started doing some OEM that still, like, as much as everybody knows that I bag on Greg Medford just because of his temper tantrums and stuff that he has. And I don't personally like his designs, but when you look at knives that he's done OEM and machining for other people, like, you're never going to find a company that does it better as far as clean, consistent, well done. I just don't like Greg's knives, like Greg's knives. Like a lot of people do, but like they're just not knives that I really appreciate. They're kind of outside of, yeah, they just don't grab me. But when you look at like he does that knife, it might not be a knife I like, but it's probably one of the best made knives on the market. And when you look at those Strider, he's doing the OEM for Strider for those productions. Those are probably the best production Striders anyone has ever seen. Like they are the best Striders that have ever hit the market.
And I got to check them out now.
Yeah, he did a couple runs of those. I can't remember the small one that he did. One of my buddies has it. It's probably the best Strider I've ever seen. That's not that like $2,000 custom that I had. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's just it's cool that there's companies out there that are doing it. But there's the whole thing is that there's also some of those Chinese companies are doing it as good. Like I honestly, I tell Dave Dang every time I get a chance to talk to him that Horizon D that I have is still the best production folding knife I've ever owned, like hands down.
Yeah,
and I've had a lot of knives.
You know, I think the thing about a lot of the American companies, they're certainly out there. It's just harder to find people who do the OEM type work because they can make a successful go at it and sell the knives, you know, here like Three Rivers or, you know,
three. Like that's the other one. Right? Yeah, Three Rivers. I forgot about like, TRM.
They used to do a lot of OEM, and now, you know, they have a few customers that they continue to work with, like, you know, Tad and stuff. But yeah, they're pretty much doing their own thing now.
And they're doing a good job of it.
And they're doing a great job.
TRM Shadow came in, and until I got the Hinderer 3-inch non-flipper XM18, that was my knife of the year until I got that XM18 flipperless, and I'm like, okay, this is the XM18 I always need. I love the XM series, and I love Rick, but that flipper tab, because I've got really big hands, that flipper tab was just it was a showstopper. And I got that one, and I was like, that takes it out of the equation, and it's incredible. And I hate the fact that here in just a few days I have to send it back to Jared Neves because it's on loan. All the content that I get, Jared sends me boxes of stuff. But no, there's some companies now, and Nick Shabazz and I were talking about like Tucson, like this one. Tucson is one of those Chinese companies that is just like they are on that line where they are now becoming a legitimate company. Like before, people were like, oh, they crank out these crappy knives. But now they've stepped up their production and their quality to the point where they're like a legitimate, honest to goodness, like you can trust that these knives are always going to be the same. They're always going to be good. They're always going to be consistent. They're always going to be well executed. I wish
I think there's probably, you know, 2 or 3 others, you know, real similar to them that are, you know, hitting
Artisan and CJRB, Tucson, Best Tech is starting to now really do a bunch of stuff. And then what was the other one? Reich?
Oh yeah, Reich's up there.
I think Reich is another one.
Good stuff too.
Yeah.
I wish there was I started out doing a couple of things, trying to get some OEM stuff here in the States, and it just didn't go well. And then the opportunity to do something with Riot came along. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do this. I'd rather do it here, but you know,
same with my knives. I did one with I did one with Artisan, and I really wanted to do an American made knife because I wanted the knives that I had designed were things that I kind of wanted to get into like the military stock system, and not because that gives you that, like everybody's like, oh, it has an NSN. I didn't care about that. I saw those were knives that I would have wanted when I was in the military. Right. And I couldn't get it. I had went to a couple companies and they were just either weren't interested or they wanted to charge me. And I'm like, I wasn't trying to do OEM. I was trying to like license the design to them. I'm like, I don't want to try and sell a batch of 300 knives out of my garage. I don't want to do that. I want you to like pay me a portion of every one you sell. And no one wanted to do that. So, you know, but those are things things change in the knife world. So it may happen. I just got to find the right person to bite on one of those designs.
Just keep at it.
Yeah.
You know.
So that's your trends that you like. What's some of the trends you don't like? Some of the stuff that.
Well, let's see. I hate to be a naysayer, you know. What trends don't I really like? I think one other thing that I really do like that has been going on.
It's like, I'm gonna avoid this totally.
I know, because I'm just I'm not feeling like I got a good response for it, but it's been pretty cool to see a lot of interest in fixed blades lately. Also, it's just general, you know, something that's been pretty hot lately, and so I always have trouble with the really low grade steels and, you know, stuff like that. But I mean, what do? You know, if you want a knife at, you know, $30, you're not going to put S35 in on it.
But there's some steels like there's some steels that get overlooked. 440 is still a really good steel, as long as you're not going to be doing a pounding or chopping, because you know it's really brittle. Artisan is using ARPM 9, which is a steel that I got like my prototypes in, and I got the test, and I'm like, yeah, I want this. It's easy to maintain. It strops really well. But yeah, I hate those cheap. I hate those cheap steels that just don't. It's actually harder to sharpen those. Like, people ask me, like, what's your least favorite steel to sharpen? And I think I'm going to say,
not consistent.
Well, they think I'm going to say like 20 CV or S90V. I actually love sharpening S90V. It's those cheap like 7 CR and stuff like that, because like you're chasing that burr back and forth. You can't ever really get a good consistent edge. Boss Heat Treat 440 is fire. It really is. And that's what Aiden put on here. But I'll tell you the trend. This is what I was thinking. I was hoping you were going to agree with me and Jim Skelton. Top flippers, front flippers. I don't like them. Like, I can do it, but if you're going to make one without a thumb stud, I'm not going to like it. I'm going to ship it.
I tell you what, if I do a front flipper, which I'm going to, it will have a thumb stud.
I don't dislike thumb studs. As a matter of fact, that's what I told Ray. I told him, I really like this. And Ray is in a specific category of knife makers that there's not very many of. Ray has never made a knife I don't like. Like, even as good of friends as I am with Elliot Williamson, he's had a couple models that I'm like, that's just not a knife for me. Ray has yet to make a knife that I don't like. I really haven't seen one. Even the stuff when he was doing the stuff with Mike Vangino, when they were doing their collaboration, the semi-customs, those great big ones that they made then, I still like them, the big recurves and stuff like that. And I was like, Ray.
I remember when Ray was making only fixed blades.
Right?
Right. And now it's, you know, he doesn't make very many fixed blades anymore.
No, but like you said, there was a shift in the market. No one wanted fixed blades for a while, and now it's kind of switched. I was able to sell my small EDC fixed blade that I designed fairly well because the market has changed a little bit. It kind of goes in trends. Yeah, I agree with you. I'm happy that a lot of people are showing a lot of interest in fixed blades.
Yeah. And it makes sense, because what can you easily carry? I mean, folders, obviously. And most of us if you live in a city, you know, you can put it in your pocket. You don't have to worry about, you know, walking into the coffee shop. And if you go into the big city, you have to walk into Starbucks or something like that, you know, you're not going to get, like, you know, stared down or something if you're walking around with it.
I mean, back home where I live, You can walk into
carrying this.
right? The big old Randall. I like back home where I'm at in Ohio, though, you could walk into a coffee shop, or the only place you can't carry a firearm is the bank. Like that's about the only place that they like, you probably shouldn't take that in with you. Like they don't care.
San Diego, not so much.
San Diego, not so much. Like I'm pretty sure I'm breaking the law right now by having one on my hip in my garage.
No, I think you're safe there.
Okay. So I have like 2 questions left, and I know like it's your daughter's birthday weekend, so I'm trying to keep it under an hour and a half. So a knife that you wish you still had. It doesn't have to be like, it could be something you made, it could be something you owned, a knife that you got rid of that you wish you still had.
I had a Michael Gavick folder that was it was one of his earlier ones. So I guess I'd probably say that, I did trade up. Or trade with Pete Carey.
Oh, Peter Carey
traded knives. So that's been fun. Michael and I are friends and have known each other for quite a while. So I have a couple of Michael's knives, but there's one in particular that
you know what? Michael and I are friends through Elliot. And the thing is, like, I love Michael. I've never got to meet him in person. Like, we have a friendship.
Oh, he's a character.
So like
we were talking
about making a knife, and I was like, he's like, whatever you do, make sure it's thin. It must be thin to cut. I was like, yeah, it does. I got you. It's gonna be thin. Don't worry. So he's a good dude. Jim Skelton is another person that I met through Elliot that now like just we're really good friends. I had him on a podcast. It was probably one of the best podcasts that we've done. It was nuts. Jim is a nut.
Yeah.
So okay. This is the one, like me being a knife guy, you being a knife maker. What do you see people do with knives that just makes your skin crawl?
Use them as pry bars.
I gotta cut some speaker wire. Let me. Oh, there we go. Like,
I mean, hey, if you gotta cut speaker wire, you can do it carefully with a knife, but you have to split it.
You can.
But when you're
not
like
what my buddy did,
like, I don't know, open your ashtray, turn a screw.
Using it as a screwdriver. That's like,
screwdriver. It's like, oh, don't do that.
I saw a kid do that on the ship one time, and I looked at him. I was like, I'm buying you a fucking Leatherman. Because I just sharpened that knife for you like 2 days ago. Yeah, that's one. The prying. I tell the story. I had a guy. He asked me if he could borrow my knife, and I'm like, yeah, sure. And I handed him a fairly nice knife at the time. I think it was back in the day when Benchmade was like, if you were in the military, Benchmade was like the pinnacle. And I forget what knife it was. It was a Benchmade folder, and I handed it to him. And he comes back and he hands it to me, and I went to go cut something later, and I was like, the fuck happened to the edge of my knife? He was installing a stereo, and he was just basically like putting the speaker wire over the blade and just cutting through it. And I was like, because the speaker wire was too long. So he's just basically the entire edge was just gone. And I'm like, you did what now? He's like, yeah, I used it to cut speaker wire. I was like, you need to get out of my office because I'm about to beat you to death.
It's people will be at the shows, pick up a $2,000 knife and doing the full arm flick.
Or like, can you snap it out? And I'm like, please don't do that. You're about to throw that knife all over.
Either that or, that knife is a lot more expensive than you think. And you don't need to treat it like that. It's made to open.
I had a guy.
Got a nice flicker.
I had a guy grab my Norseman, and he was looking at it. He goes, "That's a nice knife," and he was trying to do the flip. And I was like, "Please stop that! All you're going to do is throw my $1,200 knife on the concrete. I would appreciate if you used it as designed It'll do it. You don't have to wrist flick it. You don't have to try and shake it open. Trust me, it works as designed.
Exactly.
Wrist flicking, like the guys that like can't do, they treat it like it's an old original Rick Hinderer XM18, like back in the early 2000s. Like you had to wrist flick the shit out of it to actually get it to flip. Knives aren't like that anymore.
Yeah. And the good flippers, it shouldn't have to do that.
No, not at all. So, all right. Well, Eric, we're at 1 hour and 15 minutes. If you've got a story that you'd like to tell about, like something that had happened, either, whatever, like humorous story you've had occur at a knife show, like somebody, like you were saying, wrist flicking a knife across a knife show or something.
Oh, I've had that.
I have seen happen.
It does. I've had that happen a few times. I've had, teenage kids come up and, grill me about where I get every last screw and part. And
the answer,
I try to encourage them as much as possible and direct them to the best places.
Which is always going to be Steve Kelly. If you need screws, it's going to be Steve Kelly.
Yeah, that's right.
Where do you get your screws? The same place every other fucking knife maker on the planet gets them, from Steve Kelly.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot more, stuff out there now.
Yeah, it's true.
I remember, I don't know if you're familiar with Spi. He's a collector from France that travels to the show or to some of the shows. He's often at the gathering, and he always used to do this thing where he'd be like, "This knife is awesome."
I know you're talking about.
And so at one of the gathering shows, I went over to Pete Carey's table and was talking to him, and I had somebody like video me, just do a little snippet video, and I picked up one of his knives and I was just like, "This knife is awesome." And we both just cracked up, and and then I posted it on my Instagram because he was having like a contest of the craziest, thing, or had been commenting about it, and so I was like, "Hey, I got to get back at this guy for just the crazy antics." He's a wonderful dude. So it's just,
I know you're talking about. I think the craziest thing I ever saw happen at a show was the last time I went to see, not this time, but the time before that, when I went to CCKS. And if you remember where Dwayne Dwyer's table was, up in that corner.
Yeah.
As you came in the far right corner, that's where Bastinelli Knives had their table. Yeah. And I was standing there and I was talking with Bastion had walked away, and I was talking with his wife and Nicholas, the guy that's always with him. And this guy was messing with one of the Makos with that unique opener they got. And the guy was flicking it and doing some stuff and cut himself like bad. And knife guys, like you see him immediately go like this and his face went pale. And I was like, I know that face. That's the face of a man that needs a lot of stitches.
Yeah.
Because like knife guys know immediately. Like my wife is like, I was like, yep. She's like, I'm like, I got to go to the emergency room. She's like, why? I was like, I got to go to the emergency room. So you didn't even look at it. It might not be that bad. I was like,
oh no,
I need to go. I was right. I need to go to the emergency room. Yeah. And this guy kept trying to say it wasn't that bad. And the second he took his hand off, he had cut like he had, no joke, Eric, he had stuck like that much of that knife into the meaty part of his thumb and just like in and just all the way down. And it was like, just the second he took his hand off, it was like uncontrollable. I was like, yep, you're going to have a lot of stitches. And so Bastion and I still joke about it. I was at his table because he was in the opposite corner this time.
Oh yeah.
So he was down in the far left corner. And so I go down and he had trainers of the Mako. And I was like, oh, it's just so that guys can play with him at the table. He goes, oh, you mean the guy at the time he stuck it in his hand? And I was like, yeah, it's bad. And I don't know why I thought that Bastion's French accent needed to be Russian, but you know what I'm doing. He got it bad. That was like the craziest thing I've seen at a knife show.
Have you followed the kids doing the butterfly knives and stuff? It's kind of cool. That's a cool trend to see. They've really
I don't like it.
you know,
I don't like it.
hey,
They're like the see. I don't like hacky sack either, and I equate it to like that's hacky sack of the knife world. And I'm like, I don't like it.
It
either.
is hacky sack.
I don't like either one of them.
I'm gonna do it or I'm good at it.
I'm not gonna lie. I've
had messed around with it and finally decided that I was probably not gonna get this.
I actually have a trainer, a Bally trainer, and it's fun, but it's not anything I would ever do. I'd much rather. I find this so much more fun to fidget with.
Oh yeah,
and so much less dangerous. This is so much safer than a Bally.
Or just the flippers. I remember when flippers kind of came into vogue and they were, just starting to get to be a thing. And it was, it was just like people were just had them, and it was like constantly this, sort of thing, like I am when I sit at my desk now. You know
what? That's actually another one of those things that like makes my skin crawl. It doesn't make my skin crawl. I just like, if I want to fidget, that's why I have things like I have like a fidget cube and I have a fidget spinner, but I have this. And if I'm going to fidget with a knife, it's going to be with this.
Yeah.
Or an OTF. Because knowing enough about knives and having enough quality knives, and now I'm friends with a lot of knife makers, and being a knife maker, I understand like flipping that knife open. All you're doing is you're inducing blade play way faster in that knife because it's going to slam open to that stop. Something has to give, and then you get that lock rock and blade play, and it's just you're detracting life from the knife. So,
well, if I like to play with it, then that's part of the life of the knife for me.
Be careful where you go with that. I've got a lot of weirdos in the comment section.
It's kind of like the big bear, right?
Like I was like, I heard you say it. And I was like, oh, here they come. Here come the comments. But no, I mean, I get it. Like I still, like that's one of the things, like, because you got to, as a knife reviewer, I got to be able to test the action and things like that. But I do recognize that, like, every time I do that, like I'm deforming that stop pin, or I'm deforming the lock interface
a little bit,
but I've seen people that, like, I've seen a guy, I knew a guy that he just did that, like fast, like a click, click. And I'm like,
my gosh, I know I have a couple of collectors that probably, flick their knives 1,000 times a day, kind of thing. Just like, it's like a constant thing. If they're like on the phone or whatever, I can hear them in the background.
It's their knife, it's their knife. Right. It's their choice. But when it irritates me is when then they want to blame the quality of the knife or the maker. And I'm like, no, your knife has blade play because I watched you sit in 2 hours, flip it probably 600 times in 2 hours.
Yeah.
Which is why I have so many knives. That way I can just flick however many I want. Spread that out across all of them.
I'll tell you one other thing that kind of falls in that same thing. And you were asking me about trends that I don't like. And Nick Shabazz is a great guy, but and he knows how to take a knife apart.
Yeah.
But he has encouraged a lot of people to just go and open things up, and then like 90% of the repairs that I do are from knives that have like been opened up and not put back together quite right.
Oh yeah.
And so then they're not lined up, the pivot's not tightened appropriately or whatever.
I had a guy send me a knife one time. He was like, I took this knife apart. I was trying to put these aftermarket scales on it. And he's like, I just put everything. I can't get it to fit. And so he sent me the stuff. And like, I think I told this story on a podcast one time or on a live feed. He sends me this thing, and it's like held together. He's like, I couldn't get the screws all the way in. And I looked and I was like, that's because that's a freaking wood screw. Like, why is there a wood screw in this knife?
What's this doing here?
And so I tried to get it out, and he had screwed it in so tight that he had basically cut new threads. And he's like, well, are you, I told him, okay, hang on a second. Come on. Are you coming up? Jesus Christ. So, are you smiling because you know you're interrupting? But yeah, I told him, I was like, he's like, so what? God, you got bad breath. I was like, he's like, so what are you going to be able to do? And I was like, nothing. I'm going to put everything back in a bag, and I'm going to put it back in a box, and I'm going to send it back to you. And he goes, well, I was like, I can't fix this. I was like, you stripped all the whole, you put the wrong screws in it, like complete wrong screws. And then he wanted to get mad. And I was like, first of all, you ordered the wrong scales. And second of all, you put them on with wood screws. Babe, you got to get down. And I was like, I can't fix this. I don't have that kind of time.
All right. So, yeah. Hey, if the screw requires number 8 Torx, use a number 8 Torx. I mean, come on, seriously.
I honestly wish that companies would stop using a T6. You can get a T8 now. You can with it, that. Like, I've got knives that pocket clip screws, everything. They're all T8 or T9. Grimsmo Norseman, every screw on that is a T9. And I would much rather have a T9 than a T6. So much less chance I'm going to strip that screw out, especially like with these. These aren't delicate tools. These are triple XL glove hands. And I have a tendency to get a little heavy handed. And next thing I know, I'm like, I got to get some screws.
Yeah.
And
it's, you know, there's a certain strategy to doing T6 screws. Like, you know, one, you make sure you got a good one and it's got a fairly sharp end and not something that's been like worn down, and then apply more than sufficient pressure.
Downward pressure.
Downward pressure, exactly.
Now, if the screw, like, there's a lot of guys that get their screws made. Steve Kelly actually made some really good T6 screws. The pocket was really deep.
Yeah.
And those were great. So if you can get if you've got a good bit and the screws are well made, it's not a problem. But a lot of people, like, they want that shallow look to it. It looks fancy, and they work and polish and refinish that pivot, and they're just then it winds up getting kind of rounded at and there's not much to grab on anyway, and then you put that T6 in, and now you just strip that socket out.
And then, you know, like most knife makers are probably going to be putting Loctite on anyway. So then customer, you know, takes it and may not be prepared for the gumption that it's going to take to get it out. So, I mean, that's why, you know, that downward pressure and really,
or not know that you can take a lighter and heat that up a little bit
and heat it up a little bit, and then it's going to break loose much easier. Yeah.
One of the best tricks anybody taught me, and it was Nick Shabazz, because I was trying to heat up a pivot, and he was standing there. He goes, have you tried putting a bit in and hit it with a hammer? And I was like, no. I was like, why would I do that? And he goes, give it a shot. And he walked back into this is at Elliott's shop, and I was like, all right, bang. I was like, I'll be damned if that didn't work.
And you said it just like that too, right?
Yeah, that's exactly how he said it, because it's Nick. No, I like to use Nick's voice because, like, it's funnier that way. But Nick,
right,
absolutely.
I know.
I tell people, they're like, does Nick talk like that? And I was like, kinda, but really no. Like, when you talk to Nick in person, you're like, now I was like, it's like me without the hat. And Nick without the Shabazz. It's just, it looks like somebody you know, but it's just something not quite right.
Right.
So, well, I'll tell you what, we are exactly at an hour and a half. Eric, I will go ahead and let you go so that you can spend the rest of the evening with your daughter. Tell your daughter happy birthday.
I will do that.
You have a Merry Christmas. Guys, go follow Eric.
And a Happy New Year, because I probably won't see you before then.
So don't forget, guys, here's his website. It's right here. It's easy. It's Ochs Works right there. So go check out his website. How many more of how soon are you going to have more of the productions up on there?
So we'll put some more up right at the end of the year. I have some up there right now. There's a handful of each color up there right now. We'll put more right near the end of the year as well.
Okay.
There's some at Arizona Custom Knives.
Oh, okay.
And then Knife Center is going to have some as well.
Cool.
So
I might, because I don't have any expendable income, but I might reach out to you, see if I can borrow a prototype to put it on the channel.
absolutely.
Do a review of it.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
that'd be fun. I literally I had a guy that sent me 3 Todd Fisher's Microtech, a Tony Marfione custom, a mixed strider custom, and a Turpin. I have like literally, I usually keep knives that are in for sharpening out here in the garage, and I'm like, those are going in the house because there's like probably $20,000 worth of knives in that box this dude sent me for sharpening. So, but
that's cool though. Fun project for you.
Yeah. I'm going to be busy all weekend trying to get them done so that I can film all next week. So, all right, Eric,
don't
appreciate
scratch those.
I'm actually, that's one of the things is why people send me those expensive knives is I do it all. I do it all freehand. I'm really careful about keeping abrasives off, and I do it with water stones. So there's less like overspray and stuff. And then I take them apart and I clean them and give them like a spa treatment before they go back out. So
yeah.
But that's so like there's some guys that sharpen knives and people just send stuff to them. And I have kind of carved out that little niche market where I've got like guys that are sending me like $5,000, $6,000, $8,000, $10,000 knives for sharpening. And I'm like, why do you want this sharp? And this guy told me, he's like, oh, the Fishers, I carry them all the time. I'm like, you do what now?
Oh yeah.
That's a fucking $4,000 knife you got. And then I think I was like, well, I carry a $2,000 knife on a daily basis. So, but well, it has been a joy to have you here. It was fun talking to you at the show. I've always wanted to have you on the channel somehow in some way, and it just worked out that we got it set up and we're able to do it this way. So, appreciate you taking the time.
It, Mike. It's a good time.
Yeah. If you got something else that comes up, if you come up with new stuff, we can always revisit this and do it again, and you can talk about new stuff that's going on. And then I'm going to give these guys a little heads up about something that's going on after I cut you loose.
I've got the prototype. The prototype for the second design. I've got that back. So, and then we have the third design in CAD right now that we're, finishing up. So
nice.
So should have 3 different models out. Hopefully by the end of the year, we'll see.
It's kind of nice to not have to make them yourself, right? It's nice to still be able to make a knife if you want, but like, hey, my knives are still happening, and I didn't have to.
Yeah, I'm still going to be going to several shows a year and doing those and doing customs for that, as well as some orders. So. I'll keep doing the custom thing. It's fun, and it's it's a totally different thing though. But it's nice to have this as an offshoot as well.
Yeah.
So
I like right now. I'm here at the house. I don't have access to. There's still some stuff I need. I don't have all the contact reels that I would have had at Elliot's shop to do like finger choils and stuff like that. So I'm making knives at a very limited capacity. So. Which means I'm probably not making knives really. And it's been raining a lot here. So my grinder is outside underneath a tarp.
Oh,
so, but
that does make things more difficult.
Yeah. I will cut you loose. You have a good evening, and I will talk to you later.
All right, Mike, take care.
Take it easy.
All right.
Okay, guys. So there's one last announcement I wanted to make. I have a new affiliate. I'm going to start putting it in. You guys are going to see some banners and stuff. I'm hoping that it turns into a sponsorship. It is Atlas VPN. They are running a huge sale. VPNs are a good thing to have. My daughter actually is using a VPN now because it's the only way she can access her school remotely because she's in Japan. So see the value of it. I'll put a link to it in the videos from now on. So like I said, if you guys are listening to this on Apple Podcasts, there is a link to the full video down below. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts and you enjoy it, just follow my channel. So guys, I love you all. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll talk to you later.